It seemed like another day for researchers at Los Angeles' Getty Research Institute. Still, one person stumbled across a set of images that would see the team collaborating with experts on the other side of the world. They quickly became part of a shared investigation into the same strange puzzle, which focused on the death of a woman. Ancient Egypt cultists find a mysterious new relic. Then the history-altering reality hits them. The Getty Research Institute's professionals study and preserve visual art to share with the world. The organization has both physical and digital archives for research and exhibitions. Some of the garage's historians got interested in this ancient Egyptian riddle by browsing a New Zealand museum's internet database of photos. They were intrigued by a New Zealand museum photograph of an antique relic with Egyptian writing. You might think that doesn't sound particularly notable, except that this specific piece seemed familiar to the Getty researchers. They had seen something just like it before. Still, after diving into their archives at the Gray, the researchers realized they had access to an artifact that appeared to fit perfectly with the one from New Zealand. They were both strips of fabric from an ancient mummy adorned with text. The Book of the Dead is full of vivid and fantastical imagery and tales that can make for jarring reading today. In one now famous afterlife morality test, a heart is weighed on a scale against a single feather. In another section, a god made of body parts from various creatures obliterates someone's soul. These tales are outlandishly alien and compelling to the modern reader because these images are so thoroughly. The directors took some artistic liberties with this film's straight translation of the novel. The Book of the Dead is more accurately called the chapter book of Going Forth by Day, but the word book, in this context, may be misleading. For starters, you may think a single author wrote it, but the tome was never intended to be a single work written over many years with different contributors. The compilation is a relatively recent phenomenon. The Book of the Dead of modern history begins in 1842 with a German historian named Carl Richard Lepsius, who organized and compiled the texts in a way the general public could understand. Thanks to him, people's understanding of ancient Egypt and its people was transformed. Specialists wrote the texts, so the quality of the right fighting was obviously dependent on each individual. The Book of the Dead helped modern historians understand the writings. The Book of the Dead is an amalgamation of multiple texts that evolved over ancient Egyptian history. When a person in ancient Egypt died, a priest would read aloud from the Book of the Dead in a ceremony and perform ritualistic practices to prepare the deceased for the next life. These practices may seem strange today, but the ancient Egyptians saw them as positive. One such custom was to re-establish the dead person's senses. Osiris, a deity associated with resurrection, is another significant god in the Book of the Dead, as is Re, a sun god. These two are perhaps the most important deities in the book, but more than 40 others are also mentioned throughout. The book's story is divided into 4 parts. The dead person finds themselves in the underworld where they have reclaimed their living senses and abilities. Then they are resurrected, uniting with the sun god. If they survive all these trials unscathed, they join the deities. Challenges complicate each phase described in the Book of the Dead. The dead person must say the right things at the right time, or they will fail their tests, which is why the Book of the Dead is so important. The Book of the Dead reveals ancient Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife and burial customs. One section of the book describes a facet of the soul known as the Ka, which they believed required a physical part of the dead body to survive. This description helps explain why the ancient Egyptians mummified, believing that preserving parts of the body meant a people could also survive. There were also many other rituals designed to sustain body parts. The Book of the Dead was important to ancient Egyptians, so it's a central source of information for those studying their history today. However, the text is open to interpretation, and some historians read it differently than others, so our understanding of this ancient book is constantly changing. That's why any discoveries that might shed light on it are so exciting to Egyptologists. It soon became clear that the two artifacts had once been joined together because they were both covered in matching hieroglyphics from the Book of the Dead, according to the University of Canterbury's Professor Alison Griffith. There is a small gap between the two fragments. However, the scene makes sense, the incantation makes sense, and the text makes it spot on. It is just amazing to piece fragments together, she said. The entire tableau is very closely linked with the afterlife. During the earlier stages of ancient Egyptian civilization, such scenes would have been inscribed on walls inside a tomb. Still, these things came to be written and drawn on papyrus scrolls and mummy wrappings, as in this case. Still, as Griffith pointed out, it is hard to write on the material. It would help if you had a quill and a steady hand. And this person has done an amazing job digitally combining the two wrappings. Padokarus's tragic fate raises ethical questions regarding these collections' origins and our current collecting methods. It needs to be made clear how the wrapping sections came to be separated and ended up on different sides of the world. Still, another segment has potentially been noted in an Australian university's collection. Who knows how many other bits of wrapping are out there? We at least know something about the piece of wrapping now held at the University of Canterbury, though the one at the Grey could be clearer as for the former. The segment of mummy wrapping then has passed through many hands over the years. At some point, it was taken from its country of origin and began a new life being passed down through different owners in faraway lands. Tracing artifacts back in time can be difficult and time-consuming. It's stored, but University of Canterbury students and scholars can access it for ancient Egypt enthusiasts. Prospects for the digital combination of the fragments from the University of Canterbury and the Grey are promising. Now that the two pieces can be seen together, researchers can better understand what it means, which may help them improve translations and contextualize the hieroglyphics. The curator of New Zealand's Tees Museum, where the larger fragment is, Terry Elder, said, "This shows how valuable our collection is for teaching and research, as we are still able to make discoveries about these objects. It also shows how valuable it has been to put our collection online by digitally joining the two pieces of wrapping together. Experts are still making discoveries about these objects." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.